The recess has been completed, and I'll turn the meeting once again over to our Vice Chairman, Don Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our first briefing for the Thursday, February 17th, 2022 Commissioners meeting. And we have several items today, two discussion items. One is a tax mailings, which I think, I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, actually, both of them. Well, we just took care of the tax mailing thing, and so John Burgess outlined that. So, and then the other item is kind of embedded in the agenda, so I probably can hit that one as we dive into it. So, we do not have any closed session for items for today, so it's just introducing these items for February 17th.
All right.
All right, very good.
Jump ahead.
All right, so I think what we'll do is items 4 through 24 on this are actually all of the ARPA items. And so I think if it's satisfactory with the board, we'll go ahead and brief everything except that and then just come back, because the body of the discussion today, which is pretty substantial, will be around this finalizing this first round appropriations of ARPA money. So, to dive into it, you got the minutes for the meeting we just had will come forward. Item 2 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. Ordinance, let me make sure I've got my ducks in a row here. Unreserved fund balance to fund prior year outstanding encumbrances. Item B, as part of that with the emergency telephone system. I'll turn it over to Kyle Wolf.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an item that we bring to you pretty much every year. This is necessary to amend our FY22 budget ordinance to appropriate some fund balance to fund outstanding encumbrances from fiscal year 21. We budgeted $1.8 million in the FY22 budget for prior year encumbrances. Actual encumbrances at the end of June 30th, 2021 totaled a little over $3.2 million. And so this amendment appropriates almost $1.5 million of unreserved fund balance to cover those obligations. And then Part B is we're doing the same thing basically on the emergency telephone system special revenue fund. It's a much lower amount of just $8,491, but it's just covering prior year encumbrances from last year. Any questions?
Any questions for Kyle?
All right. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. I got too many doggone papers in front of me. Okay. Item 3 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2021 budget ordinance and appropriate state authorized substance excise tax funds. Kyle, are you going to handle that? And I know Major Elliott's back here too, so
yeah, I can
introduce it and then
I can just introduce it as far as from the budget side. What we're doing is we're amending the budget ordinance to appropriate $15,000 of fund balance in our law enforcement equitable distribution fund, and they're not general fund dollars, so there's that. And then I think Major Elliott was going to actually provide the additional information on what they were going to use the funds for.
Great, thank you, Major Elliott's on his way up. So.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The state of North Carolina imposes an excise tax on unauthorized substances, including controlled substances, as per North Carolina General Statute 105-113. The purpose of this legislation was to enhance the ability of law enforcement to deter and investigate crimes, including drug offenses. The fiscal year beginning balance of these funds was approximately $308,273. The projected balance of these funds at June 30th of 2022 is approximately $350,000 minus the purchase outlined below. The Sheriff's Office proposes to appropriate available fund balance from this fund in order to purchase a new narcotics all-purpose canine. The new canine would join the current canine team of 9 handlers and canines, bringing the total back up to 10. As recently as 2010, the Sheriff's Office had 13 canines. The new canine would serve as the Field Services Patrol Division, responding to increases in criminal activity such as violence and illegal drug activity. And I would also add to that any special assignments that would come through our community that we would need to allocate those resources. The attached resolution appropriates $15,000 from the Law Enforcement Equitable Distribution Fund to the General Fund and the Sheriff's Office budget. This will cover 100% of the cost of the canine, the training course, and lodging during the 8-week handler course, which was $15,000. No general fund dollars will be used, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
The only question I have is that you already have the staff to manage the dog, the 10th dog
Yes, sir.
already.
Yes, sir.
Okay. They're very effective, and I'm very much in favor of that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Major Elliott. All right, I'm going to jump over, as I'd mentioned, to items 25, which is a resolution authorizing execution of a one-year agreement with EMS Management and Consultants Incorporated. It provides medical billing and collection services for Forsyth County Emergency Medical Services, Division Department of Emergency Services. I think Jennifer Collins is here to review this item. And as many of you know, that's a contract with EMS Consultants. It's a local firm. So,
Good afternoon. The resolution request is for a one-year contract extension with our current billing service, EMS Management and Consultants, known as EMSMC. We have teamed up with EMSMC through 2 5-year contracts, with the second contract ending the last day of this month, February 28, 2022. If approved, the extension would amend the contract end date to February 28, 2023. For the past 10 years, EMSMC has provided excellent service and streamlined the efficiency of the billing process. EMSMC is a local Winston-Salem company focused exclusively on emergency medical services, servicing multiple EMS agencies all throughout North Carolina and the United States. EMSMC is a strong advocate for EMS across the state and country through legislative efforts at both the state and federal levels. As you are all aware, things have been very busy at Emergency Services. We welcomed new leadership in April of last year, seen yet another jump in our call volume, endured the many challenges of the COVID virus and what feels like the never-ending staffing shortage. Given the many challenges Emergency Services have faced over the last year, we are requesting a one-year contract extension to allow us additional time to put together a robust and comprehensive bid package. As good stewards, we will ensure Forsyth County citizens receive a high-quality billing service at the most reasonable cost. I will be glad to answer any questions that you have.
I have just one, and the one question I have is the price of the contract going to remain the same during this one-year extension?
Yes, sir.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment on, they're such an excellent company, and it's nice that they're homegrown right here in Forsyth County, so they have a great
Absolutely.
reputation.
Absolutely.
And I have one question, please. Would you give us a number of the actual contract, please? The cost?
The
The
cost.
cost of the contract, yes.
I can tell you that the management fee is 4.9% of net collections.
Okay.
So whatever they collect, it's 4.9%. And then it's 2.47% of net collections of anything that is placed with the collection agency or through our debt set-off program.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
No more questions. Item 26 is a resolution awarding a contract to P&G Security Guard Incorporated for contracted private security services at Forsyth County Law Enforcement Detention Center. I think Major Robert Whitaker he's back there. If you can come on up, and I think he's going to come up with Randy Hunsucker, the business officer for the Sheriff's Department, and review this.
Good afternoon, I hope all's well. Excuse me. Today we are briefed resolution awarding a contract to P&G Security Guard Incorporated to provide security service within the detention center. Due to several factors, staffing has got dangerous at the detention center. Currently, there's 74 vacancies, along with all the loss of staff with COVID, with the 10-day quarantine status. So saying that the use of the private security company would make an immediate impact. Security staff would be used in areas such as control rooms, public lobby, which would allow the detention certified staff to be assigned to the security dorms. The proposal would provide 34 positions with 4 supervisors, which would reduce stress and burnout from the current staff. They've been on mandatory overtime list for approximately 4 months. On the days off, they're coming in, they work 12-hour shifts, coming in, most of them working 2 shifts outside their normal routine. Excuse me. We attempted to get 3 bids, one from North Carolina State Security, P&G Security, and Allied Universe, which declined. North Carolina State Security provided a quote of $190,000 monthly, and P&G Security provided a quote of $224,596 monthly. Out of the two, P&G has an experience. They currently have contract with Correctional Facilities, Department of Correction. They also have contracts with FEMA and TSA. They have more experience in what this environment is going to entail. The agreement with P&G is on a trial basis. We have the opportunity at any time within a 10-day notice, we can terminate the contract. We can change the numbers of staff requested. We also can use P&G Security as a recruitment tool. When they get in, they get trained. If they decide they want to stay within the agency, then they're allowed to transfer and put in an application at the sheriff's office. Payment for the contract will be covered mainly with savings from vacant positions. Any other number of questions, I'll let Randy, he is the number guru, he can handle all the number questions. Any other questions for me?
Just talk again a little bit about why you're recommending the higher cost proposal.
The two that actually entered a bid, the P&G Security has the experience already. They're currently working for the North Carolina Department of Correction. They supply security for perimeters. They search staff. The other one has no experience in this environment. So for us, we're going to bring them into the secure part of the building. They're going to have a week's training off-site, and then they're going to have a week's training on in-site, which we'll train what we want directly from them. The reason we were recommending the hire is because of the experience they already have. They have the background clearance, their siege is cleared. They already have the clearance in order to get into the building.
That makes sense. In terms of anticipated future, you're looking at this temporarily. If it works, then I'm assuming you're interested in this. This might be your model for the future.
Personally, I would like to replace them at some point with certified staff from the citizens that we hire. It's a temporary to get the staffing numbers up. Right now I have, again, 74 vacancies. We've lost probably 4 this week to retirement. So some of them are aging out. Some people have been there for years. Ideally, and that's why we put in the clause where I can change the numbers within a 10-day notice. So if we hire an influx of 20 people, I don't need, these people can only work where inmates are not housed because they're not GOC or they're not certified by the state to work within the inmate correction. So they only can work in 10 areas in the facility if they're not certified. So as our certification slots fill up, then I won't need them because I won't have any place to put them. So then that's why we put the clause in where I could change the number.
Well, let me ask this question. Let me make a comment first. It seems to me that this is an opportunity. I mean, the staffing shortages are not going to be improved overnight.
True.
So, and this kind of model for contracting for the non, detention certified officers for the work and the controlling, the behind the scenes. I read your proposal was clear. Doesn't sound like a bad model, period. I appreciate the desire to have more expensive people working for you versus the contracted people, but I guess the question becomes, can the job be done? And it looks like using this is like a trial period. This is a trial contracted services period, and I think if you do something like sort of with an idea, I'm just throwing the numbers out, like an idea of 6 months, and then reevaluate, not where you're substituting in new people. I mean, just let them see what you can do with that, because if it turns out well, it seems to me that might not be a bad recommendation for a longer term kind of issue. I understand your desire, but I think we're interested in outcomes, and if you can get the outcome, get the staffing in place, you have the staffing that you don't have now, and then it actually works, then you're looking at saving some fairly substantial dollars over time, and it looks like that's a positive thing in general. So I think thinking of it as an experiment makes a lot of sense. I'm sure, I don't know if I understand Randy's chart here. I may want to ask a couple questions on that, but.
And I will say we're the first county in the state of North Carolina that's tried this.
Oh, is that right?
I reached out to the North Carolina jail inspector.
That's interesting.
make
Well,
sure
then
that
I
we're
applaud
covering-
I applaud your creativity in trying to get something to work.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Vice Chairman, I do have some
Oh,
questions.
I'm sorry, other questions.
Yeah, thank you. So my question was regarding, I'll expand on the question that Vice Chairman Martin had. It was about access to candidates. So what makes this process different than you just hiring for yourselves?
Well, one thing for me is once they get in, I've 26 years I've done this. First night I walk in, at 22, I really didn't know what I was getting into. When they shut the door behind you, it's a totally different feeling when you can't get yourself out. So I think with them coming in, they already have that experience when they walk in. They know what's expected. So I think they have a better chance of transferring over than somebody coming straight in off the street, having no experience in the detention environment. They're in dorms with up to 62 people, and they're from speeding tickets to murder. It gives them a little more experience before they jump off into that pond.
So I know from my experiences working with the temporary service that you either work the hours or the time. So would some of these individuals possibly be candidates to transfer over to a permanent status?
There's two different, it's a contract provider. So we had multiple meetings, but I spoke with the president of P&G. They have no clause in their contract saying that one of their employees cannot apply for the sheriff's office. My concern was the other way around. And they do have a 6 month clause where they have to be separated from the county before they can apply for P&G.
That's good protection. There's something
That was good, thank you.
yeah, there was something else that triggered a thought, and it's escaped me. Maybe it'll come back. Sorry.
Just one comment, Mr. Vice Chair. I just want to thank you for being so creative in resolving this matter. 74 people not been available is a serious issue. So for you to come with an idea, practical solution to it is commendable. Thank you very much.
I just thought of what I wanted to ask. Currently P&G is working for the North Carolina Correctional System. And are the kind of jobs that you're proposing they do here exactly the kind of work they do in the prison system, in the corrective?
Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. It's a little less. In the DOC, they perform perimeter security, so they got shotguns, they're patrolling. For us, they're going to be mainly in a control room, supervising the two officers, making sure they're safe, talking on the radio and keeping the law. It's a little less, but for what, except for the two in the lobby, they'll be processing visitors, checking people in, just helping out in the public lobby, because currently we have two detention officers assigned to the public lobby dealing with the public. These will work well there, so I can take those two detention officers and put them where it has to be certified.
So they can probably mobilize and be on the job fairly quickly?
From my conversations with the president, once the contract's awarded, they will do a 2-week off-site, which will be covering our dress codes, our policies. And then when they come in, it'll be a 2-week on-site where we'll assign them with a detention officer so they'll know how to work control rooms and what logs we need. So, yeah, 4 weeks once it's contracted. They'll be there in 2 weeks, but they won't be counted until they get completely trained.
I got it.
Vice Chairman, my last statement, this is a statement more than anything else, just a clarification. It appeared, Randy, that there was some cost savings utilizing this versus us hiring on our own.
I just wanted to provide an update, since some of the numbers have changed a little bit since there's a 5% across the board pay increase and the $2 shift differential. If you just do a straight line projection, it kind of does not take that change into account. So what we did was I talked to Lee Plunkett, got the latest payroll that ended. It has not posted yet, but I have the actual numbers for that, include those increases, and use that to revise the projections. And then I only looked at detention center. So if you revise the estimate and look at just detention, you're looking at approximately $1.5 million in total net personnel cost savings.
Excuse me, you got that upside down.
Okay. Try it this way then. How's that?
That's still upside down.
Okay.
Try it the other.
Well,
There
we
you
have-
go. There you go.
We have a copy of it.
You're looking at over $1.5 million in total personnel cost savings. That's net of all salaries and wages and fringe benefits. The proposed, and that's for the current fiscal year, for just detention. It includes the recent pay increases and assumes that the vacancies will hover about where they are now, which is 70 for these numbers here. So it's actually worsened a little bit, which means it could be a little higher. The proposed P&G contract before you today, the first, for the remaining months of this fiscal year, the cost would be $898,386. I doubt very seriously, because it'll probably be a little bit of delay if they bring in people more in waves. You can't hire and train 30 people at one time. So worst case scenario, once you take that off, you're looking still at a savings of about $643,000 at the end of June 30th for just this one area. So it well pays for itself. And then as we go into next fiscal year, we'll discuss how we can mechanically do that with the county manager. But what we'll look at is if the vacancies improve, we're hiring more people, we will lower the amount that of contracted workers to keep those in balance so that the monthly cost of the contract will never exceed the amount of the monthly contract. So we'll police that closely.
Okay. Well, thank you, Randy. This was good work, and I agree that it's good creativity as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'm good. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you, guys. Agenda item 27 is a resolution approving the purchase of computer equipment for the school nurse grant, for the school nurse grant program that we received, and Gary Kuntz with MIS will review.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and staff. This item is in relation to a grant that you guys approved at your September 16th meeting last year for school nurses. So what was before you today is the computer equipment that would equip those school nurses. And this is a state contract purchase and meets all procurement guidelines. And we did validate state contract pricing with other vendors, and I'm available for any questions. All right, thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Gary. You have two property matters, and Chelsea Swaim, I believe I saw her virtually on the screen. Chelsea, are you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Very good. Okay, you got two items. Item 28 is a resolution authorizing the execution of a lease agreement between Forsyth County and North Carolina Baptist Hospital for the lease of the property located at 501 North Cleveland Avenue, and then the other one is the publication of offer on the property on Robin Hood Road. So turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This item, the first item, is a lease, an item to authorize the execution of a lease agreement with North Carolina Baptist Hospital, where the county would be the tenant and we would be leasing 4,496 square feet at 501 North Cleveland Avenue. And this space would be used for the Public Health Department to continue their operations of their dental clinic and one of their WIC clinics. It would be for a 3-year term, December 1 of 2021 through November 30th of 2024, and it's at an annual rental rate of $56,694.60, which is $12.61 per square foot. And the county would be responsible for providing routine maintenance and janitorial. However, North Carolina Baptist Hospital would be responsible for major building envelope repairs as well as grounds maintenance. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have on this item. Okay. The next item is to authorize publication of an offer to purchase county surplus property that the county received, and this was an offer from Strategic Development Partners LLC for property located at 0 Robin Hood Road. It's in the amount of $11,000, and the county acquired this property in 2011 via tax foreclosure. It is .71 acres and is zoned RS9, and it has a taxable land value of $20,800. And this is just vacant land in a very residential area. And again, the offer that we would be publishing for advertisement of upset bids is from Strategic Development Partners, LLC, in the amount of $11,000, which is 52.8% of the taxable land value. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Is that 0.7 acres in that neighborhood situated such that somebody could put something on it?
The property is triangular in shape and has, it would require some dirt to be filled in. The topography is a little bit of a challenge, but if you worked at it a little bit, yes.
Could you share your screen with that property? This is
Yeah, I saw
probably,
it, but I couldn't, yeah, I'd like to see that.
Yeah. And so we asked, I think Aaron King some time ago what his take on it was, and what he said was it is buildable. It's whether or not it is possibly buildable. It's whether or not somebody would or not.
I don't know if you all can see my screen, but that's an arrow. Okay.
What's the nearest cross street?
It's in between Chatillon and Meadowlark. Or Chatillon and Millhaven.
And just as a reminder, our general policy has been if we receive a bid of over 50% of the tax value, we bring it to you. And there might be a few exceptions, but generally speaking, we won't bring you. If somebody's offering half a tax value, we wouldn't bring it to you. We sort of push that, and then obviously if there's interest in it through upset bid, it would go up, and then it would come back to you after the final upset bid is received. So, that is a matter of sort of our management policy on what we bring to y'all for policy. That's what we do. Yeah. Yep. Did you hear that, Chelsea?
I could not, I'm sorry.
Okay. Commissioner Kaplan said, could we get an expanded map so we can actually see some cross streets and on it and what have you? And so if we can get that for next Thursday, that'd be great.
Yes, absolutely.
And what the zoning is around that property? Which
Yes, I will
is
do
all
that.
of it RS9 and adjacent to it?
It is.
Looking at that,
is
it doesn't look like RS9 kind of property.
Yeah.
I will get that for you next week, yes, sir.
And we don't have a purpose for it, for this land?
We do not. We talked about whether or not it was a potential like tower site or something in the future. It's just not big enough. So we did not see where we had it as a surplus principal.
Why do we own it?
Chelsea, do you remember how the county acquired that?
It was a tax foreclosure in 2011.
Okay.
Did you say the value was 20,000?
20,800, yes, sir.
Do you have the property address?
It's just listed as 0 Robin Hood Road.
We'll get some additional information, larger in some of the history on it, and get that back to you.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Chelsea, just one final question. Did they express what their intent was with the property at all?
They did not, no, sir. It is a local entity. They are off of North Point Boulevard. But no, they did not share their intent.
All right. Okay, very good. And then the last item are reports, and what you've got is the Forsyth County Emergency Services 2021 Annual Fire Report. That is, it is a terrific report. It is in your agenda, and Gary Stiers is here if you've got any questions about it, and if you want him to kind of review that, I probably would suggest that he review that next Thursday, just because we, the amount of detail we need to go into the ARPA recommendations. So. but I'll wait to hear from y'all's desire on that. So the next part of this is pretty involved. Do you want to take a few-minute recess before we dive into this, or do you feel comfortable we can go ahead and jump into it?
I'm okay. I don't know about everybody else. Everybody's good.
We're good? Okay, very good. So if Kyle Haney can come up, as I mentioned, items 4 through 24 are feels long awaited. I don't know. We've been at this for so long, and you've seen bits and pieces of this over really months now. Kyle's got a presentation to go through, with these round one recommendations. I guess in sort of introducing it, staff's done a ton of work on this. There are lots of groups together that across all these categories that were put together. And I just want to thank everybody. Well, we pulled in folks from the community. It was kind of a fluid arrangement around that. We've tried to be really transparent out in the community about where we were. A lot of people were saying, had asked questions, are we approved? Well, we've had to explain to people really nothing's approved until this board approves it. And so, what we've also tried to do is sort of use our normal, make this feel a little bit like a normal budgeting process kind of mid-year. And so that's really what it is. And so, what we submit to you are some staff recommendations. There's other areas where we felt like there just needed to be some policy discussions because it was really all policy in terms of what we kind of were hearing from you as board members through this. And then really over the next 2 weeks, kind of finalize this round one. In talking with Kyle and Chantel both, there is, I think, an appreciation that has developed in the community for you getting the application process out early. It's taken a long time to go through it. We did it blindly in a lot of ways because we had not seen the final guidance that came down. The final guidance finally did at a time that it was timely, and we sort of reacted to that. And as I talked to my counterparts, the clock's ticking because December 20, you want to get this money out there because you want to get the programs in place, and it's going to take some time. So probably spoke too long, but I'll turn it over to Kyle.
Can I make one other comment? I think it's important as the public looks at this and think because the advanced agenda was out. I've already gotten a couple emails, and I think it needs to be clear that these are ones that we're kind of, they've had a lot of vetting, and they're sort of on that list to be approved with some discussion we'll have today on some others. But if something's not mentioned today, because there are some proposals that were sent elsewhere, other proposals, if it's not mentioned today, doesn't mean that it's not a possibility even, simply because it just hadn't come back or it hadn't been a piece of that. So it's not like this is the end-all no for the end of the first round, because we still have more we're going to discuss in this month. We're going to discuss more policy guidance and all those kind of things. So maybe you can I think that's an accurate statement.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, commissioners. Absolutely. We opened our application process to the public back in July of 2021, received them in August, and have been working on them ever since. We've learned a lot. We have reviewed these multiple layers of review, have discussed them with the commissioners multiple times, and so there has been extensive review, and some of it has just been trying to discern on a policy level whether there's a recommendation, and some of it has just been the more we've learned about the regulations from the federal government, we weren't sure that it would be something we could fund at this time. Certainly, we're not bringing to you any that we've turned away at this point. This is all just recommendations to fund. We'll be looking for guidance from the commissioners on what the priorities are. There will be some funding left over, significant funding left over to do additional rounds, and so certainly we have all of those applications in our system and can go back to any. And Commissioner Martin, like you said, we did send some to Forsyth Tech. We did send some to the school system, so we can always revisit those as well. Well, good afternoon, commissioners. It's like the county manager said, a long time coming here. And so what we have here is just staff recommendations that we have reviewed with you all. And I will go through those in varying amounts of detail. I will say on each page, we're going to do this by category. If there are ones that you want to bring up and have further discussion on, we'll do that on a page-by-page basis. And then there are some that we have not put in the recommendations. However, we will discuss just to try to get some guidance from you as well. A couple things up front that I wanted to mention was, we are still reviewing the final guidance for the implications on the revenue loss piece of this. They did provide some additional detail on that. I know that's a conversation we've had out here. And so, as we get through that, we'll come back to you with that piece of it. And then another piece that came out of the final guidance was some additional vetting and requirements around capital projects. And so when we're talking about recommendations today, I'll highlight which ones are capital projects, but the resolutions that are prepared for those, they are approving them to move forward in a process where we do the ARPA capital project vetting. They would have to come back to you for an additional approval if they get through that process. But it is a show that we are moving forward and intend to fund those projects. However, we just need to make sure that they comply with the federal guidance.
Yeah, and I'd add to that some of those may be the question of whether if there are certain provisions that the group that's trying to do this has, they may not be okay with the requirements, and so there'll be a little bit of negotiation back and forth on that. So
absolutely. And then one additional piece here is that per our policies that the board approved at the meeting just now, there is a conflict of interest policy. So on some of these recommendations, the board members will have conflicts of interest. It's highlighted on there, so board members will need to recuse themselves from the conversation or potential vote on those as well.
Kyle, what do you expect of us today? As we go through these, do you want us, if we have concerns, or are you just going through it today and we'll talk about concerns later?
I think today would be a really appropriate day for concerns. So we've put out the ones that are in the recommended. I would say for the most part, there have been a couple last minute additions, but are ones where we have agenda items ready. They are intended for you to vote on. If there are concerns about those, we can always pull those. Okay. And then the ones that we highlight that are not in the recommended, if that's something that you want to add in, we can prepare agenda items for the meeting as well. So I think this is the space where we're expecting feedback on that.
Okay.
And so I guess I would suggest just think of this as almost a budget workshop, part of the next two meetings. So think of it in those terms. And then my understanding from Gordon is because of some of those requirements, what is a little different than a regular budget thing is every one of these will be voted on separately. So Gordon may want to speak to that. That's sort of why the structure of this is the way it is.
Yeah, that's also to avoid conflicts. If we put them all together, then several of you may not be able to vote on any of them. So, and they are separate items. As Kyle has explained, there's some items that in 2 weeks you will be able to approve. Those are operational and will be done. I mean, we'll have to do a contract, obviously, but that's it. The capital ones, we've learned through the final rule, which just came out very recently, there's a written justification required if the project is over $1 million, and that's pretty specific information that the federal government wants in terms of alternatives that could have been done to the capital. Basically, the Treasury doesn't really want you to spend this money on capital projects over $1 million. So if you do, you really have to justify it. And so that's on this slide. That's the additional requirements that we'll have to collect from the proponents. And some of them will be fine with it, and others may, as the manager said, they may choose not to proceed.
Cal, one general question. When will the next allocation of ARPA funds be received by the county? Do you have an idea?
No, if Lee's online, he may have that answer. I believe it's no later than sometime in May of 2020.
May is what's...
It should be around May.
May?
So just something you've seen before, kind of an overview of where we are. There are 176 applications that we received. 23 of them were internal from county departments, 153 from external agencies. The allocation we received was $74,256,322. The 3 items below that are already approved from this board: the revenue loss, the performance pay for county staff, and then the cost of the ARPA administrator and administering the ARPA funds. And so remaining balance is $48,401,353. As part of this process, we did our best to group the applications into different sub-initiative categories. So you can see those in front of you: affordable housing, gun violence and gang prevention, sewer water infrastructure, workforce development, educational attainment, small business support, arts and tourism, behavioral health support, rent utility and financial assistance, food, nutrition, health and wellness, and public health support. As you can imagine, not all of the applications fit tightly into one of those, but we did the best we could and had outside review as well as multiple internal reviews of each of these categories. So with that, I'll start going through these by category, and I'll just, after I go through those, I'll just pause, and if the commissioners have any item they want to specifically speak to, we can go that, and then there'll be some where I'll go ahead and prompt some discussion. First sub-initiative was affordable housing. The commissioners have already taken, the board has already taken action on this on December 2nd, 2021. There were no applications that were funded. Those were referred to the participating the municipalities where those projects were planned. And there was one that was in Louisville. It was also forwarded to the city of Winston-Salem because they had shown interest in that.
So the only thing I might want to say there, and you can add into this, is there has been some communication back and forth about these and what the status of those are with the city. The city intends, I think, to open a process up sometime in February, March, and kind of go through it. But there were some dollars set aside for some of the housing initiatives on that, and they got some additional appropriation from the state through the last budget. Anything you want to add on kind of what you've heard from them?
Yeah, I think the communication has been, if they do review those, and I mean, we forwarded them to them, we didn't deny them. So if they forwarded them to them and they wanted us to consider something, they are welcome to have that conversation. But certainly, we're communicating with their staff on that.
Just curious, Kyle, have they sent it back to us so far?
They have not yet. I think they're still in the midst of finalizing their process. So, but we're communicating with them. So the next sub-initiative is the gun violence and gang prevention. Action was also taken on these items on December 2nd, 2021. And so this is a time, I'm going to turn this over actually. The first one to talk about is the Cure Violence Initiative. The study at that time had not been completed. It has been since completed and presented. And I'm going to turn over to Deputy County Manager Chantel Robinson to give an update on that.
Thank you, Kyle. And so for Cure Violence, as this board knows, they have completed their assessment and presented it to the county commissioners, and they have recommended that this county would be a good county to proceed with the Cure Violence model. And the city of Winston-Salem is holding a briefing on this at their Public Safety Committee on February 14th, and it is our indication that they will also support this program, but certainly it is unknown at this time until they formally do so. At this time, we really just need our commissioners' direction on whether this is something that you would like us to proceed as staff. This has come through the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council as a method to try to reduce crime in our community.
I'll just make one comment. I'm in favor of it if we have a really, and I think the right word is robust evaluation. And that means a local evaluator, get maybe some outside, we talk to a national guy that can provide help to them. And I think that it has to be set up in a experimental neighborhood and a controlled neighborhood. And this budget is based on all three. There were three neighborhoods identified. This is all three, and I think an easy division on that would be the largest neighborhood is sort of the experimental part, and the other two would be the control. And as results come in, it could be in that 3-year period that could expand to the other two neighborhoods. And otherwise, without that, I cannot support it without that. But if there is an evaluation model those things in place, a good control in the neighborhood part, I think I think the word, and you were on the phone with a guy from the John Jay Criminal Justice, University. Basically, Dr. Butts made the comment that they are promising practices. They're not proven, but they are very a promising practice. And needless to say, that guy had an awful lot of experience with it from the research side and exposure, and visited successful sites all across the country. So that struck me as very favorable. I don't know how other people feel about it, but that would kind of be where I am.
The one thing I'll just respond to is we have had preliminary conversations with Winston-Salem State University, who is interested in doing the evaluation work. We actually met with them during the assessment process, so they are interested. In terms of the controlled environment, Cure Violence is recommending the 3 areas. And you are correct, in their assessments or their evaluations, what John Jay has done is determine one area and compared it to another. If this board decided to do that, then we would have to select one of the 3 areas, and essentially you would be putting the program, hypothetically, let's say in Cleveland Avenue, and you have violence interrupters and outreach workers, and maybe your controlled environment is Rolling Hills, but you've put no resources in there, and then what you're trying to evaluate is, did it work in Cleveland Avenue, and is crime being reduced? But then we potentially would be watching crime increase in Rolling Hills. And so the question really would be for this board is, do you want to proceed with all 3 or just one?
Very much not all 3, because if you're looking at the matching neighborhoods, I think clearly those are comparable neighborhoods. And I saw the results of there were 2 started in New York. The John Jay guys evaluated. They matched with 2 neighborhoods that were similar without. And what was interesting is that in the controlled neighborhoods, there were reductions in crime in those too, but there were reductions that were more in the actual experimental areas. And I think without that data, you can't draw any conclusions about success at all. You can't even say it's promising.
So Vice Chairman, if I could weigh in relative to the area. So on the heat map, I think that they gave the number 222. It's like the area. I'm not quite sure if Rolling Hills was part of that. It was, okay, because I don't have the map.
It's Cleveland, Piedmont, and Rolling Hills.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that, Dawn, because I think that we will, Commissioner Martin, I think that we will be having some sheriff's offices support in some other areas. So I would recommend probably going to Rolling Hills, because I think that the work in Cleveland and the other housing neighborhoods is going to be resolving. So that would be my recommendation. So thank you.
And I do think that if we get this outside person that's going to work with Winston-Salem State, I think they could help on this whole comparative neighborhood issue. I think they could help look at that. I think what the Cure Violence assessment is that these are 3 neighborhoods they thought were ripe for intervention, but there may be some other matching neighborhoods that could be done. I think that just requires a little more. I think the research model should determine where we start out experimenting and how we do it, and that requires more expertise than we got here.
Just a comment or two, Mr. Vice Chair. I've been working with JCPC for 5 years, and there are some youth programs I've actually not supported because there was no real outcomes. Some I have supported. But this Cure Violence model is the best thing I've seen since I've been on that council. And ideally, all 3 to me should be supported, but I will agree with my colleague that if we want to go forward, which is the name of politics, we have to compromise. So I'll accept my colleague's recommendation in that regard, especially as I look at the next item on here, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. I think that will do a lot in Rolling Hills and other areas of the county going forward. So I support what our Commissioner Martin is suggesting.
Mr. Vice Chairman, first of all, I really appreciate what the team has done to gather information for us. You all have vetted, and most everything on here I will support. But I do have a real problem with this program, and at this time I will not be able to support this.
Any other discussion?
Okay.
Number
The
two.
next item.
I said now number two.
Yes, sir.
Let's
The next,
see, we'll be
the
out
next
by 10
item,
tonight.
and I'm going to pass this one off to the county manager. So another part of the recommendations that were made on December 2nd was the sheriff's office had requested $3,862,750 for a juvenile intervention and investigation team. This board recommended the sheriff negotiate an interlocal agreement with the city of Winston-Salem and town of Kernersville. And so I'm going to turn over to the county manager to give an update on that.
Okay. So thank you, Kyle. So the sheriff and I participated in a meeting to really kick that off with the sheriff, management from the city of Winston-Salem and the city of Winston-Salem's police chief, and we kind of stepped through, and I tried my best to communicate what I thought the will of this board was around a formal interlocal agreement that would guide this, and it was clear to me that that an interlocal agreement, a formal interlocal agreement on the front of this is really not possible. I pushed really to sort of replicate the success that I felt like we've had through the drug task force and in that effort. But we were not successful. And what they had submitted, and I'm just going to read parts of it, was we have a letter from Katrina Thompson, the police chief there, and she notes in that letter, and I apologize for reading, but I think it is sort of the crux of the response back to them, is the City of Winston-Salem Police Department created a gang unit in 2006 and its gang steering committee in 2010. Units made great strides in addressing juvenile gang activity through collaborative efforts with other agencies and community groups. Kind of outlined that. What they committed to in the letter was the police department will work collaboratively with the proposed team, share information with the proposed team as allowed by law, and assist in training for deputies assigned to the proposed team.
Would you read that again, that last little part?
Okay, yep. The police department will work collaboratively with the proposed team, share information with the proposed team as allowed by law, and assist in training for deputies assigned to the proposed team. This support is limited and conditioned only by the following principles: that the proposed sheriff's department team will participate in deconfliction efforts so as not to duplicate existing efforts or investigations by other law enforcement agencies, and in particular the Winston-Salem Police Department. As such, is critical for officer safety, and that the sheriff's department will not actively recruit Winston-Salem police officers to staff the proposed team, as the police department is currently facing the same shortage of officers as other agencies nationwide. And so you got a couple of issues. The policy kind of direction back that we need is, in the absence of an interlocal agreement, or do we want to move forward with funding it, and really do we fund it at the level that has been proposed? Which, as I looked at it, and I would let Kyle Wolf or even the sheriff, and sheriff, if you want to come on up and add anything in, it pretty much mirrors the staffing of the Winston-Salem Police Department team. They are very similar into number of officers assigned and so on and so forth. So with that, that's really where we are on this one.
Well, before the sheriff says anything, I want to ask a couple questions. Sheriff, please stay right there, but you said that it was apparent to you that an interlocal agreement was not possible. And so I'm trying to get at the issue, why is that?
I can say it is not possible on the front end because her response to this was, you don't have this, so we don't know how we can cooperate. And I tried to say, well, you can do it on paper and then kind of move into it. I don't know. I know this is what was said, and that's.
I'm speaking for myself. Mm-hmm. Speaking for me, it seems to me. I mean, we heard a description of the model, and that you're already experimenting with it now. And I mean, I think it's a different approach and is a good one to help, particularly with an emphasis on allowing a path for gang members to get out, which is good. And it would seem to me that approach would be, if you really look at, to me, interlocal means, or working, really what it means to me is working together. And working together would sort of mean, I would think, Kernersville, I think maybe one of their officers participates in the program. Maybe one or two or three of Winston-Salem PD officers participate in the program. And I know money's always an issue, but the grant funds could pay for officers in all three jurisdictions. It seems to me you work together a lot better when you really are in the same, you're saying this we think's a good model. And what I heard you say, Mr. Manager, Dudley, was that basically that some of these things seem to be mirroring issues that are going on in the city. And it just seems to me it should be something we're trying in our three law enforcement agencies to do, because we have this as a problem throughout the county. And clearly led by the sheriff's office. The sheriff has created, they've experimented with it and so forth. But it's just like bringing in, and I think some of the Family Justice Center brings in, a cross-section of different agencies and collaborations and law enforcement. So that's what kind of, not so much the agreement as it is working together. And by working together, there's some Winston-Salem PD and Kernersville and Sheriff's Office folks all kind of working together. That's what it means to me. And I don't know if it means that to everybody else, but what it means to me. I'm sorry, Sheriff. Now, jump in.
I just want to say good evening, and I just want to first thank you all for your kindness and generosity as we've been working through the issue in the detention center. I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank you for the allocation of the equipment that we're currently using up at the Weaver plant. It was your grace and to allow us to purchase the drone that you see that they're using and some of the other equipment. I want to thank you for that as I was sitting back there. But as it relates to the juvenile intervention team, the experiment team that we're working with has been called out today to work with the Winston-Salem Police Department. I think the issue was why they did not want to issue that interlocal agreement was they were saying that you don't have one to start with, so that it doesn't make sense for us to enter something that you don't have. As it relates to the drug task force, we had a narcotics unit already when we created that task force. And as you know, that is one of the most successful task force that they've had in this area in the history of working together. So I think the issue in talking with Chief Thompson was where they were hanging their hat was, you don't have one. So we can't enter into something that you do not have. Now, once you have one and we see the effectiveness of it, then we can have that conversation. And I think that's where the hang-up has been with the interlocal agreement. You don't have one. And so what we do have is what we've been experimenting with. And what I can tell you is that it's been successful, it's working. We have had men remove themselves from the various gangs. We have talked to mothers who have thanked us for taking time to come and talk with them and talk with their kids. And as I said, as recently today, we actually were going to bring the gentleman over here that they look like high school students. They have been working in this intervention, but the PD called and asked, will you assist us in some things that we're working on with our units? So we said, hey, run with them today. But I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I appreciate you. I think that is much needed because we do not have one in the county. We don't. And I don't have to tell you all, you see the devastation in the communities, and it is much needed.
So, Vice Chairman, if I may, while the sheriff is here, Sheriff Kimbrough, the reason why they call you High Lord Sheriff is because sometimes you have to carry the mantle. And thank you for your push, because we wanted to support this back in our special appropriations in our last funding season. So this, in my opinion, is the best time to do that. With the juvenile intervention and investigation team, I want to be able to support that. I know where your heart is with this community, and I'm expecting that, with the work that we have going on with Cure Violence and Forsyth County with the Sheriff's Department, we're going to see some transformational kinds of things in our communities, and that's what the expectation is. So I wanted to say thank you for your push, and I'm here to support this effort. Thank you.
And Mr. Vice Chair, if I could, please, I'm just going to take 30 seconds. I support you, Sheriff Kimbrough. I'm just curious why people that live in Kernersville don't see the value after people who in the Oath Keepers got some time behind some activity in Washington, D.C.
I can't speak to why certain people don't see value in certain things. I can't speak to that. All I can tell you is that I see the value in it because I see the devastation every day of what's happening in this city, in this county. And, you know, as I always say this, and I have this conversation, is that I can't sit back with a blind eye and say because it's not happening in certain parts of the county or someone else doesn't see value, that it doesn't have value. I know from my 40 years of law enforcement experience that it has value and it is needed.
I would think that from my perspective, you got my full support on this particular project because it's not a make-believe thing, it's real, and you got to grab a hold of it while you can, and it's a needed thing. And you said that.
Well, I fully support this also. I think this should bring some comfort to parents whose kids are in school now. It certainly would me if I had a child in school. I appreciate what you're doing, and if you have to go it alone, go it alone. It's fine with me.
Let me make one comment then, is that generally speaking, support starting, but maybe starts with a smaller part, which is a proof of concept, and also to have an evaluation component that is really monitoring exactly it's kind of an external looking at what's happening. Because as I recall, Sheriff, this is not just an in-school thing. It obviously extends to beyond, which is why you're talking to us instead of the school board. This is out into the community and into neighborhoods, and it's a bigger project than just schools. Am I correct about that?
You're absolutely correct. You know, as we have said many times, the issues that take place in the schools originate in the community. And you have to be able to function in the school as well as in the community because what's in our community comes in our school doors.
And I can certainly support a smaller proof of concept, then we end this issue that it doesn't exist, because then it would exist, because we've worked on it for a year or so, we have data, we have an evaluator, and then I would hope that we have some buy-in from the rest of the law enforcement community to see that that's important and that it would be something they would want to be a part of. I'm still a little confused over all that, but I won't go any further. But I'd certainly support something on maybe a smaller scale to start till we got something to show that it works.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I'd like to make just observation from myself. What is, and I don't pretend to know all that would be done here, but in general, it seems to me that some of the work that would be going on in this initiative and some of the kind of things that's proposed in the cure of violence, it seems like some of the objectives would be the same. I say some, maybe not all. And my thought would be, I don't have a complete opinion today on any of this, but somehow it's possible that some of them could work together. I don't know whether they will or not, but in general, aside from what is involved in law enforcement, I don't know how many of these, well, it's on here 100 and some different organizations wants to do various things, and some of the things seems like to me are some of the same kind of thing, and those same kind of things look like to me could somehow be worked together, but apparently not. But that's just my observation on this. Not trying to make any criticism of anyone. That's just a view that I wonder about. So that's all.
Any other comments? Sheriff, thank you.
Thank you.
The remaining applications that were submitted in gun violence and gang prevention were actually referred to in that item in December 2nd to the Behavioral Health and Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. Those are funding processes that the county already have, and those applications really fit those, so those were all forwarded to those processes.
Have we notified those grantees, those requests, that's what's happened to their application?
Yes, and they've all been notified that they need to apply through the JCPC process in behavioral health, which is actually up right now.
Thank you.
If I may, Vice Chairman, so just to clarify, Chantel, when you said that was made, it was made in an email, letter, a phone call?
I'll have to clarify. I'm pretty sure it was an email, but I will certainly double check.
Sure, thank you.
And I think we've tried to communicate that does not mean they're going to be funded. It means that they'll be directed to a separate process. I think there's a little confusion throughout some of the process that, shifting it over meant it was going to,
I agree. Thank you.
So the next category is the sewer and water infrastructure. There was one application proposed to be funded at $500,000, $500,000. And that is an item that's been before you many times, the Highway 65 water line that we've brought to you on different grant proposals. And I just wanted to add that as part of the state budget, $3.1 million was set aside for water and sewer utilities in Forsyth County. I've been working with the utilities commissions to draw down those funds that would go towards this project. So this $500,000 is the estimates to do that project were somewhere between 3.1 and 3.6. This $500,000 would be set aside and used if that 3.1 was not sufficient.
Praise the Lord.
Good.
The next category here is workforce development. And so there are two applications being recommended here, and the total amount, $3,048,268. The first one is Forsyth Tech to use technology to expand their nursing program. It would allow 60 to 90 new nurses to graduate in over a 2-year period, and they would target individuals who had to drop out of their programs. And that amount is $548,268. The other one is Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. It's a workforce collaboration involving them, Goodwill, Forsyth Tech, the school system, the Workforce Development Board, that would help co-locate services. They would work together on marketing as well as developing pipelines for easily accessible pipelines for individuals to be able to access our strategic industries. And they would, Forsyth Tech and Greater Winston-Salem Inc. would co-locate, and then there would be space available for those other agencies as well, the innovation quarter. And the amount for that is $2,500,000.
Is it true in that second, the Greater Winston-Salem Inc. proposal, which by the way I think is a great idea, is it true that of the $2.5 million, about $1 million is actually in lease costs for a place to house this?
Yes, sir. It's $200,000 per year for 5 years.
That just strikes me as expensive for that and for the purpose of, these dollars. And maybe there could be some conversation or thought given to that part. Otherwise, I think it's a great idea. Just maybe some thought more to the location and what it ends up having to cost.
We can communicate that to Greater Winston-Salem Inc. I know one of the rationales behind Innovation Quarter was really on the branding workforce for the community as a priority. So we can communicate that to them.
Any other comments? Ready to move on.
The next category is the educational attainment category, and Commissioner Martin, to your point earlier, there were some that are not up here that we had forwarded over to the school system. So we will touch base with the school system and see where they are in their process and report back to you. So in this category, there are 5 proposed for funding. The total amount funded, $5,737,462. Crosby Scholars expanding and some of their existing programs to Title I schools, $800,000. Collidium, this is operational support with the PRISM initiative, and so that's working with Title I schools for scholarship and engaging them in some of the STEM programming they have. Imprints Cares, this is expansion of their Ready for Schools program, and that's in the amount of $3,337,462. YMCA of Northwest North Carolina, this is a capital request for work at the Reach Center, which is the Winston Lake YMCA, and that's $1 million. And then Family Services, Inc., Child Development Center at the Commons for $500,000. That is also a capital request. So I just want to reiterate here, you know, if these were approved for funding, that would be really moving them on to a further review. And if they can meet the compliance or agree to the compliance guidelines, then they would come back for an additional approval.
Kyle, did I hear you correctly say it had to be over $1 million to get that additional explanation?
Yes, sir. And so, and I appreciate you pointing that out. So the guidance said that the project had to be over $1 million. So even if we didn't, if the total cost of the project was over $1 million and we're only giving $500,000, it still had to meet that further guidance. And so the total project of that Child Development Center is over $1 million. This is just a portion of the cost.
And I do assume that the little parenthesis with Martin and Plyler simply means that we could not vote on those proposals because
yes, sir.
The chairman serves on the YMCA board and I serve on the gliding board.
Yes, sir. That is, and you'll see these throughout the presentation. That indicates there is a conflict of interest, which means we would have to abstain from the vote in the discussion.
And what does the asterisk mean on the asterisk is a discussion of the capital?
That's capital. That just indicates that it is a capital project.
I got it. Sorry, I missed that. Sorry. Any questions on this group? Thank you.
Next category here is the small business support category. There are 3 applications proposed for funding here, recommended for funding for a total of $1,045,700. The first one is Downtown Winston-Salem Partnership. This would fund advertising and marketing around the downtown area with a specific focus on Liberty Street corridor. The Flywheel Foundation, the Come Up Accelerator, is a program that they have for minority and women business startups. And so this money is really tied specifically to developing that curriculum for their program. And then Experiment and Self-Reliance and SG Atkins. This is the small business IDA program that has been a part of what the county has done partnering with Experiment and Self-Reliance. This would fund that program over a 3-year period. And then the discussion item here, there was an application that was recommended from the Winston-Salem Urban League. The total application from them, essentially they wanted to establish a community development financial institution that would be able to provide funds for affordable housing as well as small business loans to individuals and businesses who have not been able to access traditional banking markets. One of the premises of that was that there was not a community development financial institution headquartered here in Forsyth County. The recommendation did not include the affordable housing piece of it. It was just centered around the small business loans. I will say there is a existing CDFI that operates. It's based in Greensboro, Piedmont Business Capital, who does provide lending in this area in Forsyth County. And then True Liant was actually just named a CDFI last week by the federal government, or approved. So really, the 2 questions, the policy guidance that we were looking for from the board was whether or not providing funding to a CDFI for small business lending was something that they were interested in. And then if so, this would be something the Winston-Salem Urban League is not currently doing. They would become a CDFI, they would hire staff if that is something this board wanted to pursue.
Well, I would just make a comment. I think the idea of the small business loans, and which is a federal authorized service, which has some advantages with less capital. I mean, able to do that, I think is good. But it seems to me that it needs to reside at a financial institution that's already doing it, I guess is an issue. And I guess I just probably, I don't understand why that would go through the Urban League when this is not the business that they're in. I mean, this is like a financial services business, and I don't see that as a part of the mission of the Urban League.
Well, 2 comments very quickly. We'll take 35 seconds on this one. The state has funding also for these kind of institutions, and I've emailed Kevin Monroe to see if there was any money still available for experimental concept here. I haven't gotten my email back, but I'm waiting on it. But I do think it's a lot of value in this, and I think part of the premise of the whole American Rescue Fund was to give opportunities to those who have not been engaged on this level in certain projects. That's part of the concept, to make a transformational difference in the community and to be able to sustain what you're doing. So I would not hesitate too much in allowing the Urban League to have this opportunity. And once I get the email back from Kevin, I'll let you know what the state has available.
Any other comments?
Mr. Vice Chair, we just need to be very careful that if you're conflicted out, you don't comment on a particular item where you have a conflict.
I apologize.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. All righty.
Any other comments on, because really what we're looking for is guidance on whether or not we should add an item for approval to the agenda. Or
We have to tell you right now.
no, we can come back. We got another week as well, so.
Let me think.
So the next sub-initiative is arts and tourism. There are 3 applications recommended for funding in this category for a total of $4,550,000. The first is the Tourism Development Authority for marketing and advertising. That they generate their money from occupancy taxes for hotel stays. And so what this is $1.5 million that would help make them whole. Obviously they've seen revenue losses over the last several years, and this would kind of shore them up over the next bit to be able to have the same amount that they've had in previous years. Arts Council of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County, essentially we would be working with them as to do sub-recipient programming, and so they would help provide funding to artists and to art institutions in the community that are aligned with ARPA. Specifically, their application mentioned working in low and moderate income communities and qualified census tracts to try to have programming to address issues there, as well as providing technical assistance to arts-based organizations. The amount here is $2,750,000. And then the Creative Center of North Carolina, this was a project proposing to work with nonprofits in this community, analyzing the impact of COVID, and then looking at where there's duplication of effort and creating a strategy to create better alignment and become more efficient with that. And this one is at $300,000.
And the last one, those are nonprofits in the arts community.
Yes, arts community as well as some other ones as well. But once again, this was one where it was hard to find a place to put it. And so, there certainly were talking about arts-based nonprofits as well. So this was about the best place we could find.
Kyle, could I go back to the tourism? I don't know, I don't see it designated, but I'm on that board. Do I need to?
I checked with the county attorney. Since it's a governmental institution, that would not be a conflict of interest.
All right, thank you.
Gordon, correct me if I didn't explain that correctly. All right.
Thank you.
Any other question on this category?
I should make a comment also, Kyle. 30 seconds, sir. I am an honorary member, but I'm not an official board member of the Urban League. They just honored me with that designation.
We will correct.
Please note that.
All right, the next category here is behavioral health support. So there are 5 applications recommended for funding here for a total of $3,465,161. The first one is Family Services, Inc., and this is expanding their existing program for behavioral health support due to COVID. They had an increased need, so the amount is $627,661. The next one is an internal for Forsyth County Department of Social Services. This is to fund a substance abuse navigator pilot program for 1 year. That's $75,000. The next one is for Monarch to fund child-focused ACTT program for $250,000. The fourth one is Piedmont Triad Regional Development Council. This is their application was for $15 million, but this is really to fund the initial phase of planning and research around developing a community for intellectual and developmentally disabled individuals. And so that's $150,000. And then the last one is for Forsyth County. It's the Behavioral Health Campus Enhancements for $2,362,500. And that one is a capital project.
Any questions for Kyle?
Just to clarify, this is a technical point. The fourth one, I believe, is actually Piedmont Triad Regional Development Corporation, which is a nonprofit that was set up by the council, and that's the reason why there's a conflict listed there.
Got it.
And Cal, I had one question about the Behavioral Health Campus Enhancements. Could you just break that out a little bit, what that all entails?
I will defer to Deputy County Manager on this one.
Thank you, Kyle. So Commissioner Elamine, that is to upfit the second floor of the Highland Avenue Center. That's currently where Daymark is, the primary care clinic, Partners' new space. So the second floor is the complete shell space, needs to be upfitted to be able to provide more services in that building. And then also to renovate the auditorium that is across the street in the Behavioral Health Complex where the Family Justice Center is.
We can't pave the parking lot? I'm being facetious, but it's a need over there to have that done.
I'll turn that question over to Deputy County Manager Sanders Pratt.
I'll talk to the county manager about that one.
I'll talk to y'all about funding it, so that's right.
All right, then.
Any more questions in the behavioral health support category? Okay. The next sub-initiative area is rent, utility, and financial assistance. 2 applications are recommended for funding here, a total amount of $379,000. The first one is Financial Pathways of the Piedmont. This is to provide foreclosure and financial counseling. The state has actually just released a new program to assist individuals who are at threat of foreclosure. It's called the North Carolina Homeowners Assistance Fund. And so they would be working with individuals in this community, providing financial counseling around their mortgage, and then referring them to that program to actually get the assistance. And then the other one that's recommended is Whole Man Ministries of North Carolina, and they provide homeless veteran housing. That's $35,000. There are 2 discussion items here. I believe the first one we're going to defer on for now and come back to you with. There's just some staff conversation that needs to happen around that, but that was the Legal Aid of North Carolina for one. And then United Way Housing Matters. This one is actually involved with something the city has. So the city received funding from the Housing and Urban Department of Housing and Urban Development, about a little more than $4.8 million. And the guidance is really that needs to go towards homelessness and prevention of homelessness. They are engaging in a public process right now to determine how they're going to spend those funds. And so we had recommended $250,000 for this project to go to funding the winter shelter, but we were seeking guidance of whether we should wait and see if this is funded through the city's process.
Did you say you're going to get more information on the legal aid?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I think what I'd add to that is, this board, we've talked about NREM and whether or not to move forward with it. I think in talking with the county attorney, it's wise to make sure we understand the roles that a nonprofit would have in interfacing with the tax office in this. I don't think it diminishes the desire to try to address the air property crisis that is, I think, causing a fair amount of the issues in our distressed area that we've identified. So we'll get to work on that.
So if the board has any guidance on whether or not we want to move forward with funding the winter shelter, or just we can work with the city and see what they fund through their process with housing and urban development funds.
Well, we could obviously return to it if the city did not.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, sir.
So I think that's kind of in this effort to try to put things together, that seems to be one that would go with the city project well.
Any other comments on this category? Next one is food, nutrition, health, and wellness. There are 3 applications recommended for funding here, an amount of $592,000. First one is Trellis Supportive Care, and this is nutrition and patient assistance programs that they provide throughout the community, and $32,000. Memorial Industrial CDC, which is a community garden and agricultural instructional program trying to help with food deserts and lack of food. That's $60,000. And then senior services, this is a capital request. This would be towards the development of an intergenerational center for arts and wellness, and $500,000. The discussion items here are just ones that we had not received clear guidance from the board on, so we were looking to see if there was a recommendation to move forward and add these. So the Clemens Food Pantry requested $25,000, and that was recommended. And then Neighborhood Hands, which provides also delivery of meals, was $350,000.
I have a concern with the Neighborhood Hands. Many reasons, but one being the amount. I think that's a little, I would just like to have more information on that.
You can certainly provide that.
Yeah, if I could weigh in. So for the Clemens Food Pantry, I have some heartburn around that a little bit too. However, you know, it's just $25,000, so I could support it. As far as Neighborhood Hands, at first, I had some reservations, but I know the worth of work that they do here in this community. I have been on the ground with those individuals, and I see some of the transformational things that they try to do as well with regards to after-school learning. They have just kind of done some phenomenal things, especially in the Piedmont and Cleveland area. So he seems to have a pretty good hand on staff. And they have a van where they're in the community all the time. So I'm pretty sure that, you know, with this with the county and the way that we will just kind of monitor what they do, I can support this. So thank you. And Gloria, I would like to invite you, if you'd like, to come out into the community and just kind of see what they do if you're open to doing that.
I don't discount what they're doing. I'm just talking about the amount.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Just 30 seconds, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Please.
I would support $200,000 for the neighborhood's hands. And it's the first request they've made from the county. I did make some phone calls because I had some shock effect initially. So I was calmed down substantially. And the work seems to be quite obvious in the community, especially up on Liberty Street. But I think the amount is a little bit exorbitant, and I would support a $200,000 allocation.
Yeah, and something like, I'm just not as familiar either. I share I have the same issue that Commissioner Witherspoon had. I'm just not as familiar, but maybe it's kind of one of those things, a lesser amount with, again, I think the evaluation piece of all of these is important, and kind of what the accountability of where the money went and the services, it's the outcomes provided, I think is the issue. And I probably share the same, the initial reservations of Commissioner McDaniel on the Clemens Pantry 25,000, partly because, I mean, we're sort of beyond the initial crisis time of that, I think. I know we're still kind of in, I mean, if a food pantry, and there are, as Commissioner Kaplan reminds me, a number of opportunities for food issues in the community. And maybe there's just something I don't understand about that either, perhaps.
This may be a good time just to mention, you know, given the federal guidance, we're going to have extensive monitoring of all of these. You know, we do that anyway, but, you know, monthly to quarterly reporting of a lot of details. So there will be extensive monitoring. I think the county manager mentioned earlier, in some of these capital ones, once we share what that is, we'll see if the organizations really want to move forward with it. But we'll be monitoring those and sharing those with you.
Other questions for Kyle?
Next category is the public health support. And so this one is, there were 4 applications recommended for funding, $1,665,000. The Children's Law Center, just an expansion of their existing program due to COVID, $840,000. The Forsyth County internal one, this is about purchasing some bipolar ionization equipment to improve air quality in our buildings, $225,000. Legal Aid of North Carolina, this is to support having some staff at the Family Justice Center, Bridges to Hope, and $300,000, and then Shepherd Center of Greater Winston-Salem. This is just supporting their existing programs at $300,000. The 3 discussion items here, once again, were just items where we had not received full clear guidance from the board, and so just wanted to go through those. Actually, the first one is the same situation of the United Way Housing Matters. It's a $1 million request from the Bethesda Center for the Homeless. It's really a capital improvements request to do some work at their facility to make it more COVID friendly. Once again, the city does have funds from Housing and Urban Development that are specifically designed for homelessness. So we wanted to see if this was something that the board wanted to go ahead and move forward in funding, or if we would like to see what the city did with their funds first.
I'd like to see what the city does first.
Yeah, I'm really good with that too.
What's the date we're going to be asked to vote on all of this?
The date? Well, it's currently scheduled for the 17th of February is when these items would be up for a vote for this board. And obviously, we'll be back with a second briefing next Thursday, can answer more questions and bring additional information as well.
So all of this comes along 3 days after Valentine's Day.
I believe that's correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So for me, regarding the Bethesda Center, if we find that the city is not supporting this, is this something that we can come back and look at?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fair enough. That's what I want to do.
My observation on the Shalom project and United Health Centers on the Shalom project, just personally, I've contributed to their efforts and seen they have medical clinic, they have drug pharmacy issues, they have, they do a lot of direct service work in the community, and I'm assuming, I don't remember the specific request of the 50,000, but I'm assuming it's to do more of what they're doing.
Yes, sir.
Is what I assume, and I can support that because I think they have a good infrastructure and a good. There are a lot of volunteers who dedicate their time and their various center. But I know the health center. I know a couple of I know one of the medical doctors who volunteers there and works, which is I think important. On the United Health Center proposal, obviously to do more. I understand that, but I also understand that they receive the federal qualified health centers get they get the highest reimbursement rates that are out there for services. And it would just seem to me that, I'm trying to understand, maybe there's a chicken and egg part that I'm missing, but it would seem to me that they would be able to provide, you could hire another person knowing that if they delivered the kind of services that you would get that money back in reimbursement. I guess that's what I'm having a little trouble understanding that part, and maybe that's just a...
So looking at their application, what they indicated was that since COVID, their staff has really kind of been working overtime and working more hours. They've had trouble with basically, and this would pay for more employees, so it could reduce the burnout on their staff, as well as buy some equipment and supplies that would help them address COVID.
If they hired more folks, are you trying to say the reimbursement would stay the same because everybody's been working overtime? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, the indication from the application was that this was specifically to address kind of the burnout from employees and the overworking of employees.
I'll say one other comment was that kind of pre-COVID, there was a certain level of operation. I'm anticipating that during COVID and the shutdown during this pandemic, that there has been a lot of burnout and a lot more services provided, but that also means that there's been a lot more reimbursements than there was pre-pandemic. And if that were the case, that would be, looks like dollars to hire staff to take care of that. So I'm probably missing something in the financial piece of this, looking at pre-COVID to during COVID to where we are now. So maybe that's just me.
We can take a closer look at the financials and seek some additional information from them as well.
Yeah. And really across any of these, if the board wishes to have a presentation from the applicant themselves, that's possible. So we'll leave that up to y'all.
Other questions for Kyle?
Okay. Well, that is the end of the recommendations, just kind of a wrap-up piece here. Obviously, getting some of the guidance, policy direction, we may end up adding a few more of those items, discussion items to the recommendations, but based off of what we looked at here, 28 total applications we're looking or recommended for approval, a total of $20,982,591. Looking at what we had previously funded and including those recommendations, there would be a remaining balance of $27,418,762 for additional funding applications or additional rounds of funding.
Does that take care of committing all the funds?
Does not. There will be $27 million left.
You've still got $27 million
and up to
to
2
spend.
years, two potential cycles, correct?
Yes, sir.
2 potential cycles.
Okay, that's pretty good.
And then just so everyone, one thing that we've committed to is showing this dashboard of where those funds are being spent. And so you can see here, actually, based off of these recommendations, all of these applications were either serving individuals who are disproportionately impacted or located in a qualified census tract.
If we don't spend that $27 million, can we put it in investments and make money on it?
I think the federal government will want you to give it back to them.
Yeah, that was my question, not specifically that question, but how much time do we have to get rid of this $27 million before we get in trouble with the federal government?
I want to make sure I'm careful with my wording, so I may ask the county attorney. I know it has to be basically allocated by December 31st, 2024, and actually expended by December 31st, 2026. But so basically, pretty quick timeline here because a lot of these applications really to spend those funds. For us to make that decision and to spend those funds before December 31st, 2024, 2026, it's a pretty tight timeline.
Could I just say that last weekend I had a meeting, North Carolina County Commissioner meeting, and if you all could hear some of these other counties talk about what they're doing, you'd be very happy to be in Forsyth.
I believe that.
I believe that too.
So I would like to say thank you so very much for keeping this dashboard and putting it online, and even the process that we have gone through and it being available online for the constituency to see. My phone calls have reduced because people can see it and they understand it. So if we can continue this process, I would be internally grateful. So thank you.
Absolutely, and we did communicate to all applicants, what the timeline looks like, and we'll continue to communicate as we go forward.
And Kyle, just a complimentary comment to Commissioner Winston-Salem. I had a county commissioner from Baton County, to call me and say, Forsyth County is leading the state in how to spend this money. I said, oh, well, thank you very much. That's all I said.
Good. Any other discussion?
Can I make one comment? And I won't go very long, but the bottom line from my perspective is I've been thinking about, I got a call the other day from the governor's office. He said, do you all need anything for the fire? I said, to put on it or to get it out? He laughed and he said, no. He says, we're hearing that it could explode downtown and cause all kinds of problems, and smoke is going everywhere. And I just want you to know that your government in Raleigh is ready to help you. I thought, good God Almighty, he called me to say that. He could have called Dudley, probably should have, but I thanked him very much. But I thought about that whole scenario, and I frankly think if you take the county fire people, the the city fire people, the sheriff's office, law enforcement people, and all those that have to get behind this and make it work. Somehow or another, it seems to me that we had some heroic work done in the last 3 days on a fire that's never been that big in my memory at all, for all of these people to get involved. And it's kind of makes you proud to be a member of Forsyth County's Board of Commissioners and just be a citizen of the country. But the other part of that, from my perspective, is, and I know I sound like I'm promoting, but I'm not, I thought the coverage of the fire was responsible. And, you know, people say, well, the newspaper's after you or the TV station's after you. That's not true. 99% of the time. But I will say that WXII and the Winston-Salem Journal did a heck of a job over the last 3 days. And they covered it in the way I've never seen it covered before. And I just think that needs to be said, because most of the time, if they do all this reporting and you got the fire and police and sheriff and God knows what else, everybody says, well, that's what they're being paid for. But these guys, these men and women, made it happen. And that's all I wanted to say.
Well, I think it's well said, Mr. Chairman. I mean, that, we should be very thankful for all of our resources that have actually been brought to bear here in a short period of time, middle of the night, in a very dangerous situation, and a lot to be thankful for, and I appreciate you acknowledging that. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved by Chairman Fowler, second. Second by Commissioner Elamine. We're adjourned.